This is TVS. When the time reaches 5:45, we'll be joined by ITN from London.
The news at 5:45 with Alistair Stewart.
17 are dead as worst gales in 3 centuries sweep through Britain. A cross-channel ferry is beached as the south takes the brunt. The cost of damaged and destroyed homes, who picks up the bill? And Mrs. Reagan goes into hospital. She may need a breast cancer operation. Good evening. At least 17 people have been killed and hundreds injured by the worst storms to hit Britain in nearly 300 years. 1 million homes are still without power, and tonight an electric storm is causing more blackouts along the south coast. Overnight, 2 firemen were killed by a falling tree in Dorset, and 2 seamen are feared drowned off Dover. Others died in road accidents or when parts of buildings collapsed on top of them. 800 people have been stranded all day on 2 sea-link ferries, unable to reach harbour. The cost of repairing thousands of damaged homes is expected to top £100 million. The storm hit the Channel Islands yesterday evening and then moved northeast, with hurricane-force winds reaching the south coast of England at about 11 p.m. By 3 a.m, the worst of the gales were over London and Kent. This morning, the storm moved north and left the coast of Britain at 8 o'clock, heading out into the North Sea.
At one stage last night, Hampshire police said every major road in the county was closed. 1 man died when a tree hit his car. Others simply didn't see the obstacles in time. No one was hurt in this incident, one of dozens of minor crashes all over the south. 2 firemen died and 4 were injured when a tree crashed onto their fire engine. They had been racing to one of thousands of emergency calls. At Barton-on-Sea in Dorset, a family narrowly escaped injury when the side of their flat collapsed. And in nearby Highcliffe, 90 pensioners had to be evacuated when their roof was ripped clean away. Inside, the rooms had been left wide open to the elements. One relative had rushed to comfort her elderly mother. Others told of their terror the night before.
I heard a crack and a bang and something fell on my bed.
Yes.
And I got right under the bedclothes and right down and covered myself well over. And then somebody called out to us, "Are you all right?" And I said, "Yes, we're under the bedclothes." And we could hear the man in the next flat calling, "Help, help."
At sea, the wind and heavy swell had swept away most of Shanklin Pier on the Isle of Wight. Its rows of amusement arcades had only recently been renovated. And on the Hampshire coast, a cargo ship was swept onto the sand where she stuck fast. The crew could only wait patiently for the next high tide to try and refloat her. Other smaller vessels weren't so lucky. All along the coast, small boats had been torn from their moorings and swept unceremoniously onto the beach. On some parts of the coast, acres of woodland was simply flattened by gusts of wind measured in Southampton at 108 miles per hour. Even the roof of Southampton's new indoor tennis centre wasn't spared. With the wind had come torrential rain. From the air, the extent of last night's flooding became apparent, with dozens of small rivers bursting their banks. The wind has now moderated, but the clearing up's only just begun. James Mates, ITN, on the south coast.
Londoners woke up to find the capital virtually paralysed. Millions have no electricity, no telephone lines and no way of getting to work. And in some cases, the 94-mile-an-hour gales wreaked such havoc that people had to abandon their homes. This tower block was evacuated because officials feared serious structural damage. Falling masonry was a hazard everywhere. A vagrant sleeping rough was killed under a collapsing wall. And this man was badly burned when he lit a candle near a camping gas stove.
I was trying to put the container onto the gas stove and it wouldn't go on. It was near the candle. And suddenly all the gas whooshed out and ignited with the candle.
The gales simply ripped these garages apart. Roofs and walls were scattered all over the place. Residents had to dig their cars out of the rubble, only to join traffic jams picking their way through the debris. Commuters arriving at railway stations found all trains into town cancelled, and people trying to get out of London got no further than the mainline stations. In the city, the big institutions were at a standstill, power failures hit the computers, and the stock exchange stopped trading. The few money men who did make it into work found themselves at a loose end as the city ground to a halt. John Draper, ITN, Central London.
In East Anglia, gusts coming off the North Sea at up to 90 miles an hour left a trail of destruction in their wake. In Harwich, the prison ship Earl William, with its 40 Tamil refugees on board, was holed just above the waterline and broke free of its moorings as the storms lashed the coast. Hours later, it was grounded and re-anchored safely. Off the wash, oil rig workers had to be airlifted to safety when a support vessel drifted dangerously close, threatening to ram the rig. Many ships were grounded in the Thames estuary. Damage is estimated at hundreds of thousands of pounds. Others seeking a safe harbour were escorted through dangerous waters. Coast Guards received calls from more than 300 people who'd lost their boats during the height of the storm. The 40-level gale brought down power cables across East Anglia. 20,000 people were without electricity. Many will be cut off for some time to come. Lorries were picked up and cast aside as the winds blew across the bleakness of the fens. Incredibly, few serious injuries were reported. With rescue services at full stretch, there was little hope of them being righted. The villages were particularly badly hit. Cars were crushed as trees as tall as 50 feet were ripped out by their roots. Farmers joined council workmen and emergency services in their bid to reopen more than 100 blocked routes. But this evening, even the coast is virtually back to normal, with the promise of mere gentle breezes overnight. Judy Laybourne, ITN, East Anglia.
The Home Secretary Douglas Hurd has ruled out setting up a coordinated ministry to deal with future disasters. After a special meeting with other ministers, he said he was generally satisfied with the response to the storm, but all departments will be looking at their procedures.
Ministers arrived to find Whitehall hadn't escaped the storm. They had to negotiate 2 fallen trees to get to their meeting safely, some with less success than others. Energy Secretary Cecil Parkinson told the meeting how the electricity service had coped. Ministers from all key government departments reported on their responsibilities. Home Secretary Douglas Hurd, who chaired the meeting, praised the emergency services and local authorities for what he called their unstinting work. He said Mrs Thatcher sent her congratulations.
Local authorities, emergency services, public utilities, coping resiliently and well. And provided the weather continues to moderate, we should continue to make good progress back to normal.
In the light of this, Mr Hurd said he didn't believe there's any need for a new coordinating body for emergencies. Sarah Cullen, ITN, Whitehall.
One of the worst hit areas was Kent, with its ferry ports and motorways. Phil Roman reports.
A trail of devastation swept right across the southeast. One cross-channel ferry is aground off Folkestone. Another is stranded at sea with 150 passengers aboard. Hurricane-force winds of up to 100 miles an hour uprooted thousands of mobile homes along the Kent coast. At the Queen's Hotel in Hastings, a massive chimney stack collapsed onto the roof. It crashed through 3 floors, killing 1 resident. Another man was rescued after hanging onto a doorknob in mid-air. A woman was found alive on a mattress at the bottom.
We heard the voice of a lady in there, and I got her out about an hour later. But there was her husband was missing, and he was found 7 o'clock this morning.
An old church collapsed when its spire was ripped from the foundations. Many roads were blocked for hours by fallen trees. Thousands of acres of land were flooded, and tonight, damage to houses is being estimated in millions. Phil Roman, ITN, in the southeast.
An inquiry is underway at the Met Office tonight into why the storms weren't properly forecast. Weathermen have admitted their warnings came too late. And the main points of the news again. At least 17 people are now believed to have died in last night's storms, the worst to hit Britain for 3 centuries. Weathermen say tonight should be less stormy, but it will remain windy and unsettled in many parts over the weekend. Channel 4 News is next at 7, but from all of us here on the news at 5:45, a very good evening to you.